A man associates certain stereotypes with manliness. I've got to wear a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, or I've got to get tattoos, or I've got to have huge muscles. They take stereotypes and run with it. What you can have is a combination of a guy who looks like a bodybuilder and he has the self-control of a toddler.
Yeah.
Like, that's not manly. And that man can really use that strength he has selfishly.
Hi guys, I'm John Dalrymple here with the Growing Fathers podcast, and I'm joined today by Andy Naselli to talk about his book for teens titled Help, I Want to Be a Manly Man. Andy, thank you for taking the time to join me today.
It's my pleasure.
As a dad with 5 boys, lots of testosterone in the house, I'm going to be really excited to talk about this topic of manhood. So I've got a lot of questions for you, Andy, but first of all, let me just ask you to introduce yourself and your family.
My name is Andy Naselli, married to my wife Jenny since 2004. God has given us 4 daughters. Our oldest is a freshman at Bethlehem College in Minneapolis, where I teach, and our youngest just turned 9 yesterday. So I get to teach full-time. I teach systematic theology and ethics, New Testament at Bethlehem College and Seminary, mostly to training pastors at the seminary. And then I'm also lead pastor of Christ the King Church in Stillwater, which is almost a year and a half old now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Andy, you don't have any sons yet. Those sons-in-law maybe in your future, I realize.
I hope so, but I do not have any natural born sons.
So how did you come about this book for teen guys? Why would you say this topic is really important to you?
Well, I care a lot about manhood. I'm training pastors. I'm teaching guys in the college and seminary. There are people in our church who are young men and growing up. A lot of cultural givens in previous generations are not givens today. So it's going back to the fundamentals to remind guys what it means to be manly, because our culture has really feminized a lot of expectations and discourse and this way people interact in culture. And guys are needing more basic training to be men.
Yeah. You start the book by talking about unmanly man in contrast to the manly man, kind of how the culture has shaped that. Just describe for us like I guess you describe it as the harsh macho man and then the soft girly man. Explain to us kind of the reasons why you chose to use the phrase manly man for the book.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to contrast 2 ditches. So imagine you're walking down the road and you could fall off the left side of the road or the right side, or you're riding a horse, you could fall off the left side of the horse or the right side. So there are 2 errors. And one is a performative error where a man associates certain stereotypes with manliness. I've got to wear a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, or I've got to get tattoos, or I got to have huge muscles, or I got to basically they take stereotypes and run with it. And what you can have is a combination of a guy who looks like a bodybuilder and he has the self-control of a toddler.
Yeah.
Like, that's not manly. And that man can really use that strength he has selfishly. So that's not the goal, to be harsh and macho like that. But on the other side, and this is an error that I think is more prevalent in American culture, though the other one is still there too. And that's a man who I call a soft girly man. He doesn't want to do his duty. And he thinks that to do what Scripture describes men as doing is toxic. It's aggressive. So he's resigned to be wimpy and let, how about I'd say, boss ladies run his life. And we've seen this in our culture where HR departments are run by women. And it changes the whole nature of a company or of a workplace. So what I'm recommending, I call it manly man. I don't know the best word for it. A masculine man, trying to say a man as God designed. Mm-hmm. So I went with manly. That's probably a better way to say it. The idea is God designed 2 kinds of people, males and females. Mm-hmm. So if God designed you with the DNA to have the equipment to reproduce as a man, to sire, not to beget, in the sense that a woman can bear a child. If God made you with that capacity, that potential to become a father, then that means you should understand God's design behind that and live accordingly. So of course we want to look at the physical plumbing, how are men and women different, but that's not all there is. There's a lot more than that. That affects. You mentioned testosterone in your house. Well, I don't think your oldest is a teenager yet. That
Right.
testosterone is going to multiply by like 20
Potential.
real soon.
Right.
Yeah, that's going to
Right.
be a lot more testosterone coming. That changes not just your body; it changes your whole vocation, how you interact with others. It's all of life. God made us as psychosomatic, unified people. So we consist of a soul and a body together. So we have a masculine soul and a masculine body together.
Mm. That's good. So in reality, it's about being a godly man,
That's it. That's
or
it.
a man as God intends. That's what it means to be a manly man.
That's right. That's right.
So your book kind of unpacks 4 statements about a manly man, and if it's okay, I'm just going to read each one, and then we're just going to talk through each one as I made kind of some questions as I read it. I'm going to give some of those to you. So you talk about a manly man being one who's on a mission, one who is responsible, one who is hardworking, and strong. So there in your first point, a manly man is on a mission. You go back to Genesis 2. A man is told to exercise dominion over the earth, to be fruitful. A few months ago, one of my sons told me that he wants to be a pastor one day, and that would be wonderful. But God doesn't call every man to that vocation. So how do I explain this idea of this mission of exercising dominion? How do I explain that to my sons?
Yeah. So the big idea to get a mission means you need to go somewhere and do something. God made men outward focused, not inward focused and nurturing, but outward focused and accomplishing, taming, subduing. So that's why guys tend to be bigger thinkers. Like it's much more common for guys to debate geopolitics, like and think of games like Risk, where they're thinking like generals.
Right.
They want to go do something. So when I say get a mission, it's what has God called you to do? In one sense, all men have the same mission, and that's in Genesis 1. But there's more specific ways to live that out, how you can accomplish that. Maybe God's called you to a particular vocation. Maybe he's wired you with an ability, with skills to really excel at architecture or at farming techniques or at managing a company or whatever it is. But figuring out what is it that you want to go do with your life and how are you going to do it. It doesn't mean that a young man needs to know everything about that. Like, I'm guessing most men in their 30s and 40s and 50s are doing something different than they envisioned doing when they were 12. Like when I was 12, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. So it didn't happen. But the idea is you're preparing to go do what God said with his world. And that means you're not just passively letting other people serve you, wasting your life playing games, goofing off. It's having the mindset, I want to be a provider, a protector, a leader. So it's getting serious at a young age of that's what I want to do. Now, how's it going to work out? And when a lady comes along to add to that mission, you can explain to her, here's where I'm going. Would you help me? So that if he doesn't know that where he's going, she's like, she wants to be helpful, but she doesn't know what she's helping.
Right. Yeah. That's the second part of that mission that you talk about in that chapter. How it's not good for man to be alone. It's a creation norm to be married and carry out the mission of being fruitful, to produce more image bearers of God. I only have one girl, our little baby girl, but her love for babies is just noticeably different from my 5 boys. It seems like girls naturally think about those kind of things.
Totally.
But there seems to be an epidemic of guys, I would say even including Christians, who kind of delay getting married and having kids. What do you think is behind that? And how can parents raise sons who really properly value marriage and family as God's good gifts?
It starts when they're young, talking about it, so that they know the expectation is that God designed a man to marry a woman and to have babies. That's the normal design. What our culture has done is act like that's an inconvenience, that's an imposition. It's totally it's optional. But so the way I even pray when I pray pastoral prayers in my church context, when I pray for the young people and for the singles, I pray that they would get married. I assume that that is the norm, and for a very small percentage, God may give the gift of singleness,
Mm-hmm.
but that gift of singleness is extremely unusual, and it's just because someone is single doesn't mean he has that gift. If he wants to get married or she wants to get married, it doesn't have the gift. Like I think we've actually made it more difficult for single people by referring to their state as a gift when it feels to them like an affliction,
Yeah.
as something to endure, as a type of suffering. So I think it's better to acknowledge that and to encourage them to pursue marriage. But your question is, how do we
Right.
prepare them for that? It's by talking about it at a young age so that it seems not so crazy, but when they get up into their teens, like that marriage is on the horizon.
Yeah.
Our culture acts like if you get married when you're 19 or 21, but that's
You made a
nuts.
mistake. Yeah.
I was 24 and I got married, and a lot of people thought that was young. I think that
Yeah.
was older than it. I would have preferred to marry younger. How old were you when you got married?
Right around the same. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I think in the history of the world, people got married a lot younger than they do now.
Right.
Even within the last 70 years, it was normal to get married in your early 20s, and to not wait to have kids. But for whatever reasons, people think now you've got to be established in your career, and then maybe several years into that, then you could think about marriage, and then maybe several years into that, you could think about kids. What that has done is created a whole bunch of married couples where they're in their 30s, and now they think they can flip a switch and start having babies, and the most fertile years for that woman are in her past. And then often they realize, whoa, we can't just flip a switch and then out comes a baby. Then they can deal with years of infertility and treatments, and that a challenge there. I think it's so much better if God allows to get married young, have babies young. That's when you have the most energy, and then you can have grandkids when you're younger
Yeah.
too. But yeah,
Yeah. And what's interesting from my experience is you see these grandparents or potential grandparents who are struggling with the fact that their kids are not interested in having kids.
yeah, yeah,
And yet I wonder if they have allowed their children to buy into the world's philosophy regarding family, and they
yeah.
haven't done a good job promoting this gift of, or what God's good plan is. When you fail to have that expectation of get married and have kids, then also it lowers that pressure, healthy pressure to grow up
Right.
and act like a man and take responsibility, which is a later point we'll get to. So it's and then then later they're saying, oh, we don't have grandchildren. It's like that you kind of prepared yourself for that. That's your own.
That's exactly
That's
right.
your own fault.
Yep. Yep.
I want to jump back to that singleness question one more time because
Yeah.
you mentioned that briefly, but you have 4 daughters. How do you talk about singleness with your teenage daughters? You have a few
The way I just
teenage
did,
daughters.
yeah. The
Yeah.
way I just talk to you, which is the norm that God designed is that you would get married. We are raising you with the expectation that you'll get married. That's our desire. That's normal. And if God chooses not to bring you a husband, then we'll deal with that and accept that. But our mindset is we're preparing you for marriage. So everything about the upbringing is helping them develop as young women who could be a godly wife and a
Mm-hmm.
godly mom. Now, there's so much more to it than, can you cook a good meal and sew clothes? I mean,
Right.
people get the idea that's all I'm talking about. No, no. What that means is we're preparing our daughters to run a household. And sometimes that means running a household educationally. So my wife has done a ton of homeschooling, You should just a typical day in her life.
It's a hard job.
She's answering questions about Shakespeare and math and this and that, and then relational tangles and this. Just so much wisdom is required to do that well. So we're giving our daughters a classical Christian education. They're learning in their younger years, in junior high and high school. They're learning Latin, literature, logic, music lessons, like all that. Like we're trying to make them well-rounded people who can pass that on to their kids. So it's not just when I say prepare them to be a godly wife and mom, it means a low education, just know how to cook. No, it's so much more than that. It's not less than that, but it's way more than that.
Yeah. You mentioned this phrase of marrying up in
Yeah.
your little booklet. Explain what you mean by that. A woman wanting to marry up.
Right. It's the term is hypergamy. Idea is, and that's just why I don't think guys should say, I married up, and it makes it sound like their wife is way above them, and he's such a loser. That's actually a way to dishonor your wife. A woman wants to marry a man with a high status. When I say status, I don't mean like he's a prince of England or that he's a millionaire or something, but that could be part of it. But the idea is that he has a status in his character, in his skill sets, in his taking on responsibility. Like when he's around other men, they respect him. The idea
Yeah.
is, oh, you got to marry him. Wow. Like that kind of thing. Like she wants to marry a respectable man. So when I'm telling young men who are not married, I'll challenge them. Are you that kind of guy?
Hmm.
Like, does a woman think of you and like, wow, that's a catch? I mean, that means, and that if a guy's thinking that way when he's 15, 17, it's going to affect his life choices
Yeah.
about, am I preparing skills to provide? How's my character? Am I taking care of my body? Like all that stuff. Uh, and guys have so much energy at that time, and they often channel it into other stuff.
Right.
If you can channel it this way productively, oh, so
Hmm.
good.
Yeah, that's terrific. These are all related to this idea of man on a mission. But
Mhm.
the third part of a man's mission is obedience to the Great Commission
Yeah,
within his local church. So if
yeah.
you could talk to dad who's listening to this and explain, what does it mean to be a faithful church member? And why is that more than just regular attendance of worship services?
Well, it definitely is that. A faithful church member is someone who fulfills his covenant promises to the church. Did your church have a covenant? So
Yes.
idea is,
A covenant membership. Yeah.
yeah, when you marry your wife, you make promises to each other. It's called a covenant. The covenant of marriage. You're making these binding promises. When you join a church, you make similar promises about here's what we're promising to do as fellow church members. So one of those promises is something like we promise to regularly meet with one another, to worship the Lord and singing and praying and hearing the word read and preached and baptizing and participating in the Lord's Supper and giving. So those are basic ways for the regular weekly meeting. That's the highlight. And then there are all these one another commands in the New Testament that we're supposed to be carrying out. So we're supposed to be hospitable to one another, bear one another's burdens, exhort one another. So all of that is in the context of a local church. So to be a faithful church member is to be involved in all that. And when it's like if you're on a team, a sports team, your goal is to win games. Well, if you're on a part of a church, it's not really a team, but if you're part of a church, a family,
Yeah.
you have a mission, and the church's mission is really specific. There are a lot of good things that Christians can do. Like it's really good if a Christian wants to run for public office or go start a business or go start there are all kinds of great things individual Christians can do. But the one thing that the church collectively must do is make disciples. That's it. Make disciples. That's the mission.
Yeah.
We do that in our home first. We do that with our church together in our area. And if the Lord enables us, we want to do that in other places, in our region, in our country, in other countries, to make disciples of people from every nation.
Yeah. The point there is that it's not enough just to take your family to church. That's what a faithful dad does. Have your kids exposed to the teaching of God's word. First of all, it's supposed to happen in the home. But it's not enough just to bring them to church. It's not even just enough to be a faithful giving member of the church. The point here is that whether your church has a covenant or not, which I think is biblical, to have that expectation there are these, you drew attention to the one another commands. And so if you're part of a church, first of all, you should commit to a local church, and then you should be doing those one another commands. You should be actively involved in making disciples, discipling others, and that's what I mean. And that's what a man should do. That's part of our mission there. It's not just certain people, that have that as a vocational job. This is for every man.
Right.
You close that first chapter by mentioning that a manly man needs help. Can't do this on our own. First of all, we need God's help, right? Salvation, ongoing sanctification. We need his presence, his Holy Spirit. Secondly, we need older, wiser mentors. That's a great point. Thirdly, we need a brotherhood, other men who are striving for manliness. So when it comes to the mentors, that second point, what did that look like in your life? Who are your mentors, and did you seek them out, or did they come to you?
Yeah, when I say mentor, sometimes people think I've got to have like an official relationship where we, you are my mentor and yes, you're my mentee. It's not always that official. I look back at my life, my dad, Charles Naselli, was my main mentor, obviously, and he was so wise and still is. And to this day, I'm 45 years old and he is still in my life and giving me advice and feedback, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's priceless. Yeah. But in God's kindness, I was in many different churches. We moved a lot growing up, and youth pastors in particular, reached out to me to shepherd me theologically, practically, give me advice when I sought it, to rebuke me if I needed it. I just have a string of people in my life who were like that, and that's just a kind gift from God. I wouldn't be the man I am now without those men in my life. And then as I got into more schooling, I had men like Leighton Talbert at Bob Jones University, and Don Carson at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, and Mike Bullmore was pastor when I was there, and others, Mark Minnick when I was down in Greenville. These men shaped me, and I thank God for how they invested in me. So they might not think of themselves as my mentors, technically, but they all were. So a mentor could just be someone who is influencing another man with his wisdom. And I think it's helpful if men in the church recognize if they're older than other guys, and it could be as simple as a 17-year-old high schooler as he relates to the 7-year-old guys. I mean, when they're younger people, they're looking up to the older people, and just being aware of that and encouraging, exhorting, gently rebuking when necessary. And you do this with your example. You do it with your advice. This is what God made it to be. We're a family, and the church is a family.
Yeah. I see often parents who hold on to their kids, not wanting to let them go and interact with other adults who may have different, like even conscience positions or standards. But I really I'm thankful for a church family, what God has given us. And I am praying, and I've communicated to the men in our church, I want their investment into my boys. And and vice versa, I want my boys to recognize their value and to go to those men. So that has to be a starting place as dads, that we recognize the value, that we can't provide everything that our children need. Yeah. And we need other people in their lives.
So my sister Alicia is married to one of your fellow pastors, Eric True, and they have told me many times over the years how grateful they are for the other men in your church who've been able to shepherd their son Brandon and their son Jonathan, so that the only man in their life is not their dad. Well, obviously, he's the main one, but they're hearing from multiple men who are loving them, influencing them, advising them. That's really special. Yeah.
And a parent can be involved with that, especially in the younger years. My parents were saying, hey, here's a good man, go talk with him. Right. And so not just waiting for people to come to you. You can take some initiative there as a parent and as a young man to find those mentors. Let's move on to the second point, which is a manly man is responsible. That you've got a lot of great points you make in this chapter. Keep your word, sacrifice for the good of others, own your mistakes without making excuses. Under that last point, you say something that I think applies to fatherhood I want to talk about. You say a mark of a manly man is that when he messes up, he owns it. He doesn't pass the blame. He doesn't deflect. He absorbs. And a manly man does that not only for his own mistakes, but also for the mistakes of others he is responsible for.
Right.
Now, there's certainly times when our kids need to feel the consequences of their actions, right? But what does it look like in parenting to take responsibility and yet also allow them to feel some of that themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Before I answer that directly, I'll give an illustration. So I'm a lead pastor of a church. We're small, maybe 140, 150 on a Sunday right now. And last summer we were meeting at a park on Wednesday nights for meals each week. And one evening we got there and there was another group there. And I thought we had reserved it. And I came to find out that another guy who was responsible to reserve it forgot to reserve it for that day. So we had to go to a different spot in the park, didn't have our pickup spot. It was kind of awkward, but it worked fine. But what I did not do when I opened in prayer was embarrass that man in any way. In fact, I used first person plural. We. I'm sorry, guys. We forgot to reserve this. That's on us. I may even said that's on me. But so what I did is I owned it, even though I didn't make that mistake. I think that is the tendency is for a leader in that moment to let everyone know, hey, this wasn't my fault. But it's better for a man to take responsibility if he's a leader. And when you do that consistently, more authority will flow to you, formally and informally, and you'll have more respect. I think that's the mindset I'm trying to say is more manly. You're taking responsibility. So with parenting, this is hard. If your children do something that is sinful, unwise, just disappointing, they are responsible before God for their choices. They're gonna. So if they sinned against God, and they'll stand before God for that. They're accountable to God. And at the same time, I, as the head of my household, have a responsibility to deal with that and to recognize this happened underneath my leadership. And so I don't repent of it like I sinned, or I'll repent of it like I made the unwise move, but I have to recognize this happened under my watch, and I'm responsible for it. So that's a different mindset for some people, because we can be so individualistic and think it's just everyone is on their own. But the paradigm for this goes back to Genesis 3.
Yes.
After Adam and Eve sinned, and God said, "Where are you?" And the word in Hebrew is singular. He didn't say, "Where are y'all, Adam and Eve?" He said, "Where are you, Adam?" He didn't even call out Eve. He called for Adam. So I take away from that as the head of my household, and I am the head. I'm not trying to be the head. I just am. You can be a good one or a bad one. As the head of my household, I'm responsible for my wife in a way that she's not responsible for me. And I'm responsible for my children in a way that my children aren't responsible for me. So it's this extra weight, gravity I have because of that.
Yeah. And going back to that story in Genesis, Adam responds and he does pass the buck. He shifts
totally.
Blame to Eve. And I think in addition to how we relate with our kids, just when our spouse, when our wife does something that obviously was, it wasn't the best, to be able to own that. I think this applies to the marriage as well, not throwing her under the bus, but in front of the kids saying, we failed in this way. We decided this. Having that unity is really important, and taking responsibility. So I think that's a great point you make. You talk about the need for young men to assume responsibility for themselves, not to take advantage of their parents' generosity.
Yeah.
From a parent's perspective, how would you recommend really cultivating a sense of responsibility in children from a young age? And what would you say to the parent whose child, and I'm thinking more of an older child here, is really taking advantage of them?
When you say take advantage, what do you mean?
So I'm thinking of a young man. I'm just this picture in my mind of somebody, the kind of classic in the basement playing video games, taking in as a result of the food and lodging and everything, and not really taking responsibility in the home.
Got it. Yeah, I think in my book somewhere I
You mentioned something
say,
like that.
imagine um, a young man, let's say 17, 16, saying, "Hey, Dad, I think I should start paying rent," or "Dad, I'd like to pay for my car insurance." That's unheard of in our culture.
Hmm.
Like if a man's living at home and the boy volunteers that, what's going on there? I'm not saying that a young man needs to do that, but that's an illustration. If a young man did that,
Hmm.
would he get more respect and authority or less? He'd get more, wouldn't he? I'd be like,
Absolutely.
whoa, he's growing up. He wants to take responsibility. So what what I'm
How do you
thinking of,
cultivate that sense of responsibility?
it starts when they're super young. Like
Yeah.
we did this for all of our kids. We gave them 3 glass jars and they said, give, save, spend. Like teach them how to be basic stewards of money as they get it and teach them to take dominion over their room. It's so simple, but that's their
Hmm.
space. That's their one space on the planet. That's their space. So teach them, all right, what are you going to do? If for the ladies, they're going to want to beautify it and all that, but it also means keeping it orderly.
Right.
So take care of that. Take dominion over your stuff. If you own things, take care of them. Don't leave them out where they're going to get broken and rained on and ruined. The real basic responsibility things when they're young, and then you add to that as they get older. You can do this with technology, where when they're really young, you don't want them to have internet access and unrestricted screen access, and watching certain movies. And as they get older, the goal is by the time they're in their mid-teens or whatever, you don't have to have restrictions on movies and what they listen to for music and all that because you've trained them and now they're ready. They're ready to run. Because otherwise, when they hit 18 or whatever it is, when they leave the home or when they have more freedom, if that's when they get like the floodgates are down fully then and there wasn't a gradual ramping up to that, a lot of bad things can happen then. So you want
Yeah.
to train all the way up. So you just think increasing responsibility as they mature. So you start young. And you could do this
Yeah.
with young boys. You could. I'm looking out my yard right now, and I'm looking at 18 chickens over there. And a garden with my wife plants like 70 tomato plants. I mean, there are things that young children can do with stuff like that, and to learn how to manage it, how to take care of it. That's responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are great. So
right.
you were mentioning the work that's available for them to take, actual physical work. And that's
Yeah,
the next point that you make is that a manly man is hardworking.
yeah.
So it runs in tandem with the idea of
Mhm.
responsibility. You
Mhm.
define work as mental or physical effort to achieve a goal, effort plus goal.
Yeah.
You're a dad of 4 daughters. How have you practically trained your children to be hard workers?
Well, mainly by our example. My wife and I work really hard, so they see that
Hmm.
every day, and they see that's a model for them. And then if we see sloth, we point it out and exhort them. And when they're very young, sometimes it's significant discipline to work that out of their system, so that by the time they're getting older, it's just this is what Naselli's do. We work hard. So we work hard at what God's put in front of us for much of the year. That's your schoolwork. It's also your chores that you have to keep the house tidy. Like we want to have a house that is on a dime. We could have people over for a meal and be hospitable. We don't want it to be so disorderly that it would take a week to get it ready to have people over. Uh, we encourage them to work hard at side hustles as they get older. So my oldest daughter's working at Chick-fil-A right now and trying to get jobs doing babysitting for others and that sort of thing. And little stuff. It's not a ton, but we don't just want to sit around coasting. We want to work at what God's called us to do, and that starts when they're really young. We we start. Our girls have been babysitters since they were young, and my wife encouraged them to charge very little at first, just to get the experience, and then they can increase those wages as they get older. I think they were charging something crazy small for years, and my oldest daughter just put out an advertisement to some homeschool Christian group in the area for 25 an hour. And the other daughter's like, "What? 25 an hour? No one's going to take that." And she already got someone who wants her to do it. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You list a number of passages from Proverbs there in that chapter with
Yeah.
explanations about hard work and laziness. And it's a great
Mhm.
list for parents to read with their kids and teens. Talk through this idea, what the Bible says about sloth and about hard work. We can put that list in the show notes for people. A lot of those verses talk about the result of hard work, and that includes riches and profit and plenty.
Mhm.
This is generally the way things work out. But just because riches are the result doesn't mean that they're necessarily the goal always. So how have you helped your kids think about work with an entrepreneurial kind of mindset, but also with a right motivation that is not just about, gaining more money? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Or
well,
do you think
so
that's
many
right?
of the proverbs do motivate you with getting more stuff. So we sometimes we want to think, no, the motivation can't ever be more. But I forget. It's like almost 3 pages of proverbs I quote, and most of them are that the gist of them is if you work hard, you'll have plenty of bread. You work hard, you're not going to be poor. You work hard, God will bless you. Like I'm not arguing for a prosperity gospel here, but I don't want to be more spiritual than the Bible and say that wanting more stuff is a bad motivation. That's a good motivation if you want that stuff in line with what God designed it for. So here's what I mean.
Right.
Um, Stuff that God gives us, it's all his stuff. He
Right.
gives it to us to steward. We're supposed to do something with that stuff. I was just preaching on money this last Sunday to my church, and I quoted a paragraph from a forthcoming book by Abigail Dodds. She's a member of our church, and it's called Home Matters. So I just read that with my wife. It's going to come out the Canon Press probably later this year. And she tells us, it's not a story, but just as an example. Imagine a woman with one medium-sized pot. She can make a meal for about 8 people. And that's going to be a challenge if she wants to do more than that, because it's, you have to be
Right.
creative. But contrast that with a woman who has 4 large pots. So she can make a meal and serve 50 people, way more people. And she's got to store those pots. She's got to buy more food to fill those pots. She has to do more work to create the food in the pots. But to whom much is given, much is required.
Right.
But what's wrong is to think if you have 4 pots, oh, I'm so worldly. I should just downsize to 1 medium pot. That would be godlier. So that's a form of asceticism, which I can't. Stuff is bad. I've got to withhold from any kind of gifts God gives. Now, we also don't want to be greedy and just want more and more and more and more for me. The right attitude is, Lord, help me be faithful with what you've given me. And would you give me more so I can do even more for you and use what you've given me to bless other people? So the attitude of wanting more things could be horrible. It could be the whole self-centered, I just want it for me. But better than just being poor is, Lord, would you bless my labors so that I can serve you, serve other people with what you've given me? Some people have this idea that we most glorify God when we're most poor, or God is most glorified in me when I don't enjoy anything he gives me. No, part of being a godly person is you enjoy God's gifts as gifts from God. So we do want more and want to use them the right way. So your point is, don't let the motivation be a selfish accrual.
Right.
My point is, in quoting those, is don't be lazy, work hard, and with what God blesses you with, use that to bless others.
Absolutely. The riches aren't the end goal in and of itself.
Yeah.
It is there so that you can, glorify God and then share. You were talking about the larger pots. That mindset is something that we have to teach our kids about. And like you were saying earlier with the whole hard work thing, it's also something we exemplify. How do we treat, how do, first of all, we work hard, and then how do we view the stuff that we do have? Do we talk about it as if it's all ours or if it's all God's? And so how are we going to use this, both enjoy it for his glory and also share and bless others with it for his glory as well?
Money is not a bad thing. It's not inherently evil. Greed
Right.
is bad. Money is a positive blessing. If it was a bad thing, why would we give it away to other people and curse them with it? Right?
That's a great point. You give a warning about overworking, which I would guess is especially relevant for some dads.
Yeah.
You talk about working hard and playing hard and not confusing the two.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what does that look like for you, Andy?
I am very scheduled. I'm a routine guy. So when I
Mm-hmm.
wake up, I don't ever want to think, what am I going to do today? I want to wake up and know, oh, it's Monday or it's Tuesday. Today is Tuesday.
Right.
Here's what I do on Tuesday. And here's how I start every morning the same way. Here's what I do next. And I work hard. And the work day typically goes up until dinner time. And then it's clean break and it's family time. And then the evenings are usually with family, and they can be diverse in what that looks like. But during the day, that means I've got a work mindset, and my temptation throughout the day is, am I going to waste time by checking X or ESPN.com or whatever, or checking email too many times, as opposed to doing the hard work right in front of me? So that I'm a white collar worker in that sense, preparing sermons, preparing lectures, grading papers, writing books, that sort of thing. So for someone who has a job that's more manual, working hard means when you're on the clock, you are all in, you're doing your job well, and you're not just stopping to be on your phone and do other things. It's just my point is, if you merge work and play all the time. So like when I say I break at dinner time, if I were to
Right.
treat the dinner time as I'm going to check my work email every 5 minutes throughout the meal, I'm merging them. And it's going to be bad for everyone. And it's going to be bad for my work and be bad for my time to be with family. So
Yeah.
I'm the same. When you're supposed to be working, go all in. And when you're resting or playing, go all in with that. But
Yeah.
mixing them is not good. Yeah.
So you're talking about rest, but in the play side, like what does that
Yeah.
actually look like for you? And is that all? It seems like for me, most of my clean break is like it's family, and it's pretty much I'm playing with my boys in the cul-de-sac and playing baseball
Yeah.
and throwing So do you ever? This is just a kind of personal question. Do you
Yeah.
ever take time for yourself? And
Yeah. Every morning,
what does that look like?
six days a week, I work out. So 4 days I do strength training, 2 days I do
There's your
cardio.
play.
Yeah.
Except that's hard work.
It's hard work, but it's a different kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
And that's while I'm doing that, I've got earbuds in and I'm listening to podcasts and audiobooks.
Yeah.
So I really do enjoy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Most of my play is with my wife and my children,
It's a
or with
season
friends. Yeah.
where we have them there. And so I think some guys may even feel the kind of like sense of like, shouldn't I deserve some time away to go off and golf with the guys and other things? And again, I'm not speaking against that, but there is a calling and there's a short window of time that we have with our kids. So,
Right. So what's going on here
I'm-
is you got to have priorities. What's most important? In the kind of camaraderie you just described, there's a place for that, but it can't be at the top. So there's a saying that guys tend to drive. If guys are a pickup truck, they drive straighter with a heavy load. There's nothing like having a wife and children and responsibilities that focus you, so that here's what's in front of you. Now do it well.
Yeah.
If you're living like a frat boy in his early 20s with no responsibility toward any other woman or children, and it's just play, your friends are going to this bar, your friends are going to this game, your friends are doing this. That's not responsible. That's not healthy. And long term, it's going to hurt everybody around you. So having a wife and children gives you it's like guardrails. It's like you're a train on a track. Here's your mission, and the other stuff isn't just not going to be as frequent, but you can still do it occasionally. So for me, that looks like I'll go on a pastor's retreat with the other guys on our team, and while we're out, we might shoot guns, and that's fun. But even then, it's team building. There's a purpose to it. It's just not just I need to get out of here and go do my thing.
Yeah. And it's not all the time. I mean, those are probably infrequent times. So,
Yeah.
but you do get out every morning to work out. Let's talk about your final point, which is a manly man is strong.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about strength in body and soul.
Yeah.
But let's start with the body, discuss the value of the physical strength. So I was able to lift weights with you once a few years ago now.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm pretty sure I significantly slowed you down in the workout because you had to keep changing the weights. I won't say which way. But I think it was, yeah.
Well, your limbs are like twice as long, so it makes your movements harder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my excuse. You were always part of the. I think a couple years ago you said the 1,000 pound club. Maybe you're well beyond that now.
I'm trying to join the
Between bench
1,200
press
pound
and
club right
squat and
now.
deadlift.
Yeah. I'm trying to join the
So,
1,200 pound club.
oh really?
Yeah. That's what I'm
Congrats.
working on right now.
So
Yeah.
that wasn't always your story. What is your story? That
Well,
wasn't always part of your life. So what's your
well,
story and how do you get
when I
there?
was a boy growing up, I loved sports, played baseball and hockey and basketball and football. And I was very active. Um, but by the time I got to late high school and then college, I became more academic. And in college and seminary, I was extremely focused on academics. If I did anything for body, it was playing pickup games or going for runs, just to not be so sedentary, but never actually focusing on getting stronger with with strength training. And it came to a head, and when I was 35, I went to Myanmar to train pastors on a mission trip, and I got some disease that no one could figure out what it was, and I was for 18 months just wiped out, totally energy depleted. It was hard, and what God used to bring me out of that was a combination of four factors. I started eating well, so up till age 35, I literally didn't eat well. I would eat whatever I thought tasted good. That was my only criteria for eating. This is embarrassing. And then I started doing strength training, which, barbell stuff, usually 3 to 5 times a week. And then I added in some cardio because heart health is important. And then I slept more. So I was sleeping 5, 6 hours a day, and I changed that to about 8. And so those four factors God used to bring me out of that low energy. And I think I lost about 40 pounds of fat, replaced it with about 40 pounds of muscle. I mean, I'm not a bodybuilder by any means, but I'm way stronger, way fitter now at age 45 than I was 10 years ago at 35. And I wish that some godly man had exhorted me when I was 15 or 20 to do this. So this is in this book. That's why I bring that up, is that God made men strong, and being strong is good for so many reasons. It's going to help you provide and protect better. If you're not married yet, it actually will increase your hypergamy. You'll make you more. A woman will be more likely to want to marry you if she thinks you could protect her. That's part of it. That's not the only thing, but it's part of it.
Right.
But there's just so many good reasons.
Yeah. Can I
to
read
get
some of those
stronger.
reasons that you
Yeah,
list out in the book? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
God says so, first of all. 1 Timothy 4:7.
He doesn't say to do strength training, but he says that bodily exercise profits.
Why strength training is beneficial here. So
Yeah,
the second point is that it helps you get stronger, which is good and fitting because God designed men to be protectors, providers, and leaders.
Yep.
It increases your health and energy levels so that you can be better serve others. It can help you feel better, which can boost your mood. It can help you think more clearly throughout the day. Being disciplined in one area helps you be disciplined in other areas as well. And then it's a way to please and serve your family, and it can increase your capacity to treasure God in all of life.
That's good. I like that.
It's the good reasons. So for the dad who's listening to this, who kind of jokes about his dad bod, but he really knows that he needs to grow in this area as a man. What are your words for him? I know you mentioned those 4 categories, but where does he start? Because I've talked to guys like this, and I'm probably one of those. I'm 35 and still recognize the need to, I can't rely on my youthfulness.
Right.
To keep me going. I have to actually be intentional about the strengthening of my body. So yeah, where would you encourage a young dad to start?
Probably need to know a little bit more information about the guy before
Sure.
because I don't want to make a man feel guilty for being a little bit overweight if I don't know more. Like he could have an issue with his body. That's he could. Here's what I'm trying to say. You could eat a diet that is very responsible and still look overweight. And so the issue has to do with getting your blood tested and having labs and examining what's going on. It could be something like that. But for most guys, I think who are overweight, it's just a calorie in, calorie out type thing where they're not being careful, they're being lazy, and they're being sedentary. And with our technological age, it's crazy that whereas people used to just walk places and use their body for their vocations more, now if we want to be healthy, we have to walk on treadmills or get steps outside, or we have to plan to move.
Yeah.
Otherwise we don't. And God made our bodies in such a way that moving helps us in all kinds of ways. It's not just physically, it helps us mentally, it helps us
Yeah.
emotionally, it helps us spiritually. So I would exhort a man like you described to take the steps necessary to reverse the trajectory he's on. Not saying that you need to have a six pack, that's ridiculous. What I'm saying is you should be strong and fit, and that's all relative. So I have found that as a man who trains pastors and who leads a church full of men, I get far more respect from other men as a fit man, as opposed to if I was, overweight with a huge old belly and couldn't walk up steps without huffing. That's embarrassing. So
Mm.
again, if a man is like that and he hears me say that way, I'm not trying to shame you, like you're not a man, but I would want to exhort you: take better stewardship over your body. You'll feel better for it. You'll be able to. You listed those 7 reasons I
Yep.
gave.
Yep.
Those are all true. So I think it will benefit you. So I want to be careful here because the scriptures emphasize godliness over
Right.
bodily training. So bodily training is of some value.
Some
Godliness
value.
is of value in every way. So
Right.
what's the most important is godliness. But what a lot of people have done is it's taken a hold of that. Oh, well, godliness is what matters. That's all that matters.
Right.
That's not quite true either.
Yeah. And so your second point there in that chapter balances this. It
Yeah.
recognized the value of godliness, the preeminent value of character.
Right.
Um,
Right.
And so, anyway, all the point here that's coming across is that Andy isn't all about just the body here. He's about the
No.
soul as well. Strengthen the body and soul,
Yes.
and don't just focus on one. So in that second part, you list a couple of virtues. We're not going to go into all that, but I'm curious. You talk about sober-mindedness, dignity, self-control, courage.
Mhm.
You list those
Mhm.
4.
Mhm.
You teach in a seminary. You're working with a lot of men. Which one of those 4 qualities do you see most lacking in Christian young men today? Self-control, courage, sober-mindedness, dignity.
Well, the men who come to our seminary are exceptional. So I don't think of them as really low mature guys who
Sure.
need to. So, but just in general, I sense that guys lack self control. That's probably the one virtue that is like an umbrella over everything
Right.
else. So if a guy's indulging in pornography, he's lacking self control. If a man is lashing out in anger, he's lacking self control. If a man
Overeating.
is overeating, or he's a financial mess,
Yeah.
or he's full of a sinful anxiety, or his passions overcome him all the time, and
Yeah.
all that is an example of you are not exercising self control.
Yeah. I'm just going to move us to the conclusion, and I want to mention one interesting note. You mentioned that a manly man is a jolly warrior.
Yeah,
He's intensely focused on his mission, and he's joy to be around. He gladly doing what God designed him to do. C.S. Lewis wrote, you quote, "There's no sound I like better than adult male laughter." Some people might think of a manly man as like a mountain man or a grizzled veteran who never cracks a smile. But I love this image of a jolly warrior. Andy, when you think of a manly man in your life, a jolly warrior, who comes to mind?
probably Doug Wilson. He is. I've known him in person, and he's like Santa Claus. Like he's funny, he's witty, I've heard from his children they've never seen him sinfully angry. Like that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, they've never seen him lose his temper, and he's just pleasant. And yet he can also do what 2 Corinthians 10 says, which is to take the weapons from God and use them to destroy ideological evil. So it's like, imagine a warrior who puts on armor and he goes out on the battlefield
Yeah.
and he wins. And when he comes back home, he takes off the armor. He's dead. He's not, when he's home, he doesn't have the battle mindset. He's the jolly, happy, kind, loving dad. That's the kind of guy I want to be, who you can put on the armor or put on the uniform, use that when you go out. And then when you're with your family, that comes off and you're full of the appropriate kind of gentleness.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Andy, we've taken more time than I said we would, but this has been really good stuff that you've shared. Thank you for taking the time. At the end of each of our episodes, we share like a lesson from dad, from our dads. So do you, off the top of your head here, I know I didn't prepare you for this, but as you think about your dad or father-in-law or different, or grandparent, it could be, what's a lesson that stands out from a dad in your life?
I'll say about my own dad. One virtue I appreciate about him is that he is always accessible and ready to give me wisdom. So my entire life, I've been able to come to him with questions. Dad, here's a situation. This is a sticky situation. What do you think I should do? And he's always willing to listen, patiently assesses the information, and then in a non-preachy way says, here's what I recommend. And it's invariably full of wisdom. That's a gift.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Can you pray to close us and ask God to help me and yourself, but also other dads that are listening here to be that type of manly man, and if we have sons, to raise our boys to be the same.
Sure. Father, thanks for the gift of being a man. It's good to be a man. We're glad you made us men. Would you please help us to be responsible men who don't make excuses for our failures, but own them, that we take responsibility for what you put in our care, our households. Would you help us to be on the mission you've called us to and not be distracted from that, and to be enamored with lesser things? And would you help us to not be lazy? It's really easy for men to be lazy. Help us to work hard and to be strong in our body and soul. We ask all this for Jesus' sake, because we want to be faithful men who will stand before you someday, our Father in heaven, and hear you say, well done, son. Well done, good and faithful servant. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thanks again, Andy. You've been listening to the Growing Fathers podcast, just two growing dads trying to help other Christian dads grow to be more like Jesus and apply the Bible to parenting for the strengthening of families and churches for the glory of God. So thanks for joining us today. We'll hope to see you next week. Bye for now.